Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena. I understand if you're a Purdue fan, you just want this day to end. You just want it over. But I just need a few more minutes of your time here for our wrap video following number one Purdue's 65-64 loss to Rutgers here at Mackey Arena. This is brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Club Hotel. We appreciate your support as always. We'll dive right into it. So this was really, the first time, this was one of the few times, if not the first time this season, I thought Purdue looked like a young team. I thought they looked as young as they literally are, especially in the backcourt. I thought that this was going to be a test unlike anything Purdue has seen thus far this season, with the physicality, the interchangeable nature, the tenacity, and the complete irreverence Rutgers plays with at all times. The fact that Rutgers isn't really fazed by anything. They're a bunch of East Coast kids. As an East Coast kid myself, I can tell you we don't give a damn about anything. And that's how Rutgers plays. Every time this place got loud, Rutgers seemed to respond. And that's been kind of their MO. Just kind of mental strength, kind of blissful self-unawareness on their part, a vicious competitive streak that overcomes, sometimes a lack of skill. And I thought this was really going to be the biggest test yet, in a lot of ways, for Purdue's young guards and Purdue in general. And I think that, you needed to ride Ross-Ade in this game like you have all season long. The fact he gets in, foul trouble for the first time this season, maybe never gets in the rhythm. He's gotten in so often this season. Rutgers having a lot to do with that, mind you. They do a great job with their game plans defensively, especially against good posts. You couldn't really ride Ross-Ade in this game like the way he's been a kind of a security blanket all season long for all the young and new pieces around him. And I thought for the first time this season, I thought Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer kind of looked a little bit more inexperienced than they have. It's perfectly normal. You're playing against 20-somethings in the backcourt, and you're rolling out with two 18, 19-year-olds. Sometimes this happens. That's why I always thought Illinois last year was going to be such a handful for Purdue. Purdue had experience in its backcourt, but all of those dudes Illinois had were adults. And that's hard. And I think Purdue has been so far advanced this season. They've been ready for everything. Literally everything thrown their way. They were ready for Portland. They were ready for Duke. They were ready for Gonzaga. They were ready to go to Florida State on 2 days turnaround, on and on and on. Everything, it's been a best-case scenario start for Purdue and then some. I didn't think they were quite ready for this quite yet. I think Rutgers is a little bit unique. I think it is kind of something that you have to experience to handle or to really know about. And I think this isn't the first time that it's taken Purdue X amount of time, whether it be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it might be, to acclimate to the way the game has to be played to beat Rutgers. Today it clearly took a half for Purdue to acclimate, if not a little more than a half, because Rutgers was up 13 there at the start of the second half. But I thought that there was a stretch in the first half that really put Purdue in a hole. It was very reminiscent of last season in terms of it's not the volume of turnovers, it's the clustering of the turnovers and the ramifications of those turnovers. I thought there was a point in time where Purdue just looked shook. Offensively, they looked shook. And you haven't said that very often about Purdue. I just thought in general Purdue's passing was very un-Purdue-like. I thought they turned the ball over too much. I thought it was just a lot of flailing, a lot of diving, a lot of reaching just to keep possession of the ball. It just wasn't very clean, an offensive game. I think that has a lot to do with Rutgers, but I think it's also an example of Purdue losing its poise a little bit, and that's not something they've done very often this season. As I wrote before, I think in the big picture, this is probably a really valuable thing for Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. It sucks in the short term, to incur a loss, a Big Ten loss, a home loss, all of that kind of stuff, but I think both of those guys are well wired to get better because of this. Clearly, when you heard what Matt Painter said in his post-game press conference about this being Smith's worst game of the season, I don't think a coach says that publicly unless he knows his player is going to get pissed off by it and is going to work his you-know-what off to be that much better next time out. I think Painter probably has a pretty good idea what buttons to push, and thus he was using his platform after this game to push buttons. But I don't think it was just the freshman guards who were a little bit shook. I think in a game where Purdue needed him a little bit more because of Zach-Ede's foul trouble, I thought Trey Kaufman-Renn struggled with their physicality. I don't think Caleb First played his best game, though he did some positive things. I think Brandon Newman, for the big shots he made, I think he also committed some bad turnovers, took some bad shots, and by my unofficial count, they had 7 points directly off 2 of his turnovers and a bad jumper he took. I'm not saying that to kind of pick on him, but Ethan Morton, I'm fairly certain, broke down on that last Rutgers offensive possession, over helping on Mulcahy in the post at a time when Purdue had very little answer for Paul Mulcahy. So I guess you can maybe forgive him for being a little hypersensitive to Paul Mulcahy's impact on this game. But to give up a 3 in that situation was less than ideal. Credit to Cam Spencer for making the shot, but Purdue never should have allowed them to get a clean look from 3 off. What I'm saying here is it was the older guys too who were not as steady necessarily as they needed to be. I think Mason Gillis was kind of beyond reproach. I think he did a great job on the offensive glass. He made a couple of those plays that he makes that change games. But I think between Ede's foul trouble and some of the other stuff with some of the older guys who've been through this before, it was just an example of Purdue looking more shook and losing poise more than they have at any other point in time in this season. Again, probably all part of the process here. Purdue limits its ceiling by not shooting the ball well from three-point range. It's so much has to go right for them, in really close, tight games like this one, for them to be able to not feel the fact that they don't shoot the 3 very well. The first half and the second half were really telling illustrations of the difference in Purdue when they don't shoot well and the difference and when they do shoot well, because Purdue was down 10 at half after shooting very, very poorly, not just from 3, but all around. Second half, they shoot much better, and you have a chance to win the game at the end. It's just, I know it's irrefutable basketball logic that it's better to make 3-pointers than miss 3-pointers, but I'm just saying, it's just Purdue has so much more margin for error and whatnot from an offensive perspective when 3s go down, obviously. Luck, plays into this too a little bit. Ethan Morton closes the first half with a ball that goes 75% of the way down, pops out. Later, Rutgers, in losses like this, there's always a weird shot by the opponent, it seems like. Rutgers shoots a 3 from the corner. I think it was Andre Hyatt. Ball, if I recall correctly, hits the back of the rim, pops straight up in the air, and goes through. So that's what it takes, though, kind of in the Big Ten to pull off wins like this. Rutgers is good. Again, they should be 3-0 in the Big Ten, but sometimes you just need a little bit of luck, and Rutgers had a little bit more than Purdue, too. But that said, even had Purdue won this game, are you sitting here saying, okay, Rutgers led by 13 in the opening minutes of the second half. They didn't deserve to win this game. Rutgers absolutely did everything they needed to do to come in here and win. You have to give a ton of credit for them. There is a reason they are such a thorn in the side of Purdue and a lot of other people. The way they play is really difficult to deal with. I didn't think Rutgers would be able to score enough, to pull it off. I figured Purdue would have problems offensively, but I didn't know if Rutgers had the firepower to, come in here and win. And then, Paul Mulcahy, who's an unbelievably underrated player, has been, his whole Rutgers career, doesn't get any credit for anything. Nobody even knows who he is. It seems like he's just a really good, really winning player. And, you're sitting here, Mulcahy comes into Mackey Arena, a really difficult place to win, and he goes 7 of 13, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, no turnovers. Took the game over in the final 5 minutes. That's the difference between a team with veterans playing guard, and the difference. Why do I keep saying the difference between and the difference between? I only need one difference. That's the difference between 20-somethings at guard and all the experience Rutgers has, and maybe the lack of experience that did show up at times for Purdue for the first time this season, specifically at the guard position, but not necessarily only at the guard position. What's going on with this thing? I hope that's not blinding you. So anyway, obviously a really disappointing loss for Purdue. I do think this is something that, in the grand scheme of things, it's no consolation right now, but I think this is the sort of experience that, at some point in time, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer had to have in order to take that next step as players. I don't think anybody could have expected that experience to not come in the non-conference season. Alas, it did. It didn't. So it's too bad, for Purdue that it comes in a Big Ten game. It's too bad it comes in a home game. But I think both of those guys will, bounce back from this well. And Purdue just needs Zach Edey on the floor, and they need to make more threes. That's a pretty simple way to put this. But Purdue needed to be tougher tonight too. That's another young team thing. That was across the board with everybody. It's not just the young guys, but I thought Purdue needed to be tougher. They needed to be more poised. They weren't. This will be a good tool for improvement, one would think. And Purdue, even when Purdue's been winning every game it's played, Purdue has needed to get better. I do think they've been over-reliant on one player. I do think the three-point shooting was going to cost them the game at some point. It hadn't yet. It's debatable to say whether it did tonight. But there's very real room for improvement for Purdue here. And when you're saying that about a team that is now going to be like number 3 or 4 in the country and has suffered one loss this season, that's still a pretty good place to be in. That's still a hell of a lot better than the alternative. So that's what I got from Purdue's 65-64 loss to Rutgers, in which both teams outscored LSU today. So thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And I will talk to you guys again on Thursday, I think, from Ohio State. Purdue right back at it. So thanks, everybody.